Yeah, I should probably do something about that. Today, I am joined by Evdog and Sevi. Evdog is the leader of Mutiny, and Sevi is a cluster leader with WPF Collective. They are working with the Marvel Strike Force Players Voice Movement slash server. What do you guys categorize this as? Is it a server? Is it a movement? What would you call this, Evdog? What do you call this?
I would call it a movement because the intention is for it to be a permanent balance against Scopely's practices. And I want to make it clear that we're not a, you know, disgruntled group of players that are mad at Scopely. I mean, our insight is that Scopely is operating the way it should as a corporate business with
Mm-hmm.
the goal of making money. And if there are no checks and balances to that, they will go as far as they can.
Right.
So we want to set up a permanent balance to them being aware that player experience can affect their bottom line. I think the only way they listen to us is if they add player experience and player retention as part of their profit, model.
Right. Now, you two were both of you previously part of what is somewhat known as the Kraken server. Now, this is a server that it's an outreach server for highly engaged players. A lot of people call it the Kraken server because there are some big spenders in there. Were you two both a part of that?
Yes, we're both
Yes.
a part of that.
Okay, and that wasn't really working for you, was it? So it kind of led into the MSF PV server?
Yes, absolutely. We both felt that the that the voices weren't well rounded enough, that there was a large portion of the community not being spoken for, and we wanted to resolve that. And we thought the best way to do that was to create our own situation where we could gather that information and we could bring it back to the server in a focused format.
And what differentiates the PV server from, say, the Envoy server? Aside from
I
access,
think
obviously.
right. I think the Envoy server is great as well because it is community outreach. But I think here we've included general pop, and we've tried to put as many formats in place to really gather that information properly through polling, through a suggestions area, through a forum format where people could put up their ideas. Um,
Speaking
so
of suggestions, I have the suggestion channel on screen right here. I happened to be scrolling through this earlier today. Every day there seems to be new suggestions popping up from your guys' players. And one of my favorites right here is number 103. Dear dev team, there are far too many tyrannical leaders in Marvel Strike Force. Please implement a process in which, by vote of a 2/3 majority, the alliance leader may be stripped of their leadership position. Nee, you better watch out. We're coming for you. No, I love these. There's tons of these in here, and you get to vote on whether you like it or don't like it. Of course, that 103 wasn't very popular, unfortunately. I think that would
I,
be
I will
interesting.
add for that suggestion channel so people understand what we intend to do with that is we will at the end of the week we will look at the top 10 suggestions and the best upvotes, and we will take those suggestions and put them directly into the dev server,
Right.
and then we're going to wipe that channel so that you don't have to scroll through 100, and we'll place the 10 that we put so that they don't get duplicated, and then we'll do it again
Okay.
so that the top 10 suggestions are actually getting seen.
Right. Now, when you say directly to the dev server, what level of access do you guys have with Scopely? Who are you talking to?
Okay, so from what I see is we're talking to community managers, community devs that are totally put that they're totally put there to just speak to the community, probably in terms act as a buffer to keep us, keep us placated. once we put that information there, they do have to run it up the chain, which is probably 1 or 2 levels, which is why, I want to make sure that people understand that the process won't be immediate. And part of the reason why we do want to have the community behind us is community voice will make that process move faster. In my dealings, I've dealt with a lot of corporations, and I've never dealt with one that moves quickly. It's just not in their makeup. It has to be a catastrophic issue for them to move quickly on it. So I would say that we are dealing with people that are very interested. I totally believe that the devs that we deal with are interested in bringing our voice back. They're not the deciding factor. Like, they're not making any decisions, but they are speaking on behalf of us. And I think the stronger, the louder the voice is behind them, if we can be unified and stand behind the voice that they're creating for us, they will be more effective in getting our requests through.
Right.
And to clarify that these people that we're talking to are totally separate from the public community managers that most people see. They're not Archangel and Cerebro. We're working with a different set of people.
Okay. Now, one thing that seems to be apparent to me, when I first entered your guys' server a while back, it kind of looked like a Fix MSF movement version 2, where there was a lot of talk about, do we do a no spending strike or a boycott or something like that. And right away, those seem to be kind of like pushed away and said, no, that's not really the angle we're going for. It appears to me you guys are taking a long-term angle of more communication, direct intervention with Scopely at a higher level, getting feedback rather than forcing them to do something. So is it really necessary to completely unify the player base, or is it just bringing the player base's overall voice in a better way?
I think that's a great question. Now, we're not taking spending strikes or any actions like that off the table. That's just not our priority.
Right.
Our priority is communication. I do believe that we need the player base behind us and the union, because there's no guarantee that they listen to anything that we say. And if they don't, that's when, phase 2 or phase 3 start off. I just think that we don't need to come into the initial meeting with a bat. Like, we don't need to be aggressive. We don't, we can just communicate and see where we can get with that. And if the communication, if we can set up a situation where they trust our communication, we trust their communication, then we never have to get to that spending strike or that, tanking of the ratings or whatever else the other, aggressive actions could be. I think one of the things that I say in the server is, a lot of times, in my experience, the threat of it is more effective than the actual action. And there is no threat if we don't have the community behind us.
Right. Even in some of the biggest boycott movements that we've had, Scopely still brought in tons and tons of cash, and it was very ineffectual. And those were some of the most well-managed boycotts or spending strikes that we've seen. So I want to pivot a little bit here. So how many people are directly involved in curating the server itself? Is it just you two?
I'll let Sevi answer that.
No.
I didn't think so.
So we actually have a really good team of people. We have several administrators who basically, I'm like Ev's Girl Friday here. Like, he comes up with all these great ideas, and then I have to figure out how to implement it.
Man, I got to give me one of those.
She's awesome, by the way.
I work with the administrators. We have a really great and very active moderation team. We're still getting some of that into place there. And then we've also got our management team, some of who were involved in the prior movements and some of whom are CCs. others who've played other games and have experience in the industry. And the management team is the one that's really taking a lot of these ideas that we're discussing in the server in both the general population and the Alliance rep area, and condensing that down to make it a more presentable and digestible format for us to give to the devs. But without all of those people and all of these volunteers, there's no way I could run this type of server that has over 2,500 members in it since we went public on Monday.
Yeah, you guys are definitely not a fly by the seat of your pants outfit. This is a lot of professionalism. Every time I come into the server and look around, I'm seeing really good changes being made. Lots of organization going on here, and I'm actually fairly impressed with it. You mentioned CCs. What is their role in your guys' stake here?
Oh, just can I backtrack just a little bit, because I think it'll help if I just further break down how we at the moment see this working. So the management team is basically a group of us that we're just trying to figure out the most effective ways to gather and put out the information. Mm-hmm. And then we have another area of leaders and alliance reps. And what we're trying to do in that is that's where we're trying to discuss the strategy in terms of, you know, what are actionable strategies, how we're giving them the information, and any responses that Scopely has to, you know, how we're dealing with any responses Scopely has to the information. And then in our general pop area, that's where all the ideas are coming from. You know, we're trying to foster conversation there. We're trying to get the information there. And at the end of the day, after we come up with the strategy, we will put it in general pop to say, hey, guys, do you think this is the way we should go, and have a vote on it? So, you know, there's three tiers of structure here. And we're hoping that it all works together to get one product.
Okay.
In terms of...
Well, let's follow this thread here. So how can the average player do their part? How can they help you guys, and how can they help with this? What's the best thing that they can do?
They join, and they're in general pop, and they participate in the polling. They participate in the suggestions. They participate in the forums, because the leaders and the alliance reps are all looking at that. And that's where we're pulling the ideas from in terms of what we're going to take and use.
Okay. And do you guys have enough leaders helping to bring that information and cultivate it?
Well, we trying to make sure that every alliance is represented. So currently, out of the 2,500, there's about 300 leaders, and we're allowing a maximum of 2 leaders per alliance. It doesn't matter if your alliance is a Kraken alliance, a retired alliance, an independent alliance. If you have an alliance and you're a leader, you can be part of that leadership group.
Okay. And what are their specific roles within the server?
In terms of the leaders?
Yeah.
Well, as I said, the leaders, what we're doing in that area after we finish this enrollment area process is we'll look at the information that General Pop is giving us, and we're gonna probably discuss them in a structured way. The way that we have been doing it is one topic per day. So we take a topic, say something that's come up a lot, like the gold and the material bottleneck, mm-hmm. and we'll discuss it in the leaders, like what were the best suggestions? Is this worth it? Da 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 da. And at the end of the day, we will have an issue summary, and we'll put that issue summary in another channel. And then the next day, we'll take another topic and we'll try to discuss it. And we're just trying to do it in a way that's focused and we don't lose things. And when we come up with a certain number of topics that we think are worth it, we'll put it into a document. You know, we're trying to stay around 4 or 5 topics, because we don't want it to get so big that, you know, we give it to Scopely and they take forever to answer.
You need them to focus on specific things. If you flood them with too much information, then nothing gets done. And they can only do so much at a time. So you give them 1 or 2 projects to work on. Now, how often are you sending in this information to them? Is it daily or?
Well, for now, we're sending in the suggestions and the suggestions and the polling on a weekly basis.
Okay.
And remember, we just started. So in terms of the requests, we haven't really had a timeline with that yet. The first thing we did was the dev letter.
Yeah.
So, the dev letter at this point that we first sent in, two of the 5 requests have been addressed. There's still three requests that we're looking at in terms of a response, and we're looking at the timeline for it. In the meantime, we will start to put together the next letter with 5 requests. So maybe that might take another 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll send that in. But we don't want it to get to a place where the requests become too much.
Right.
So if it comes to a place where, there's 10 requests unanswered, then we start looking at what are we going to do to move forward the requests that are not answered. And whether that be stuff like, we have a day where all the alliances change their name to that one request so they know, hey, we're waiting for this answer, or whatever actions we have to move those things along. That's the way we see it working.
Okay.
At this point, and we're too young in the process to know if how effective it'll be, and we'll adjust if it isn't.
So what does when you send in a request, something that's really important, that's highly upvoted within the server, everybody kind of wants this thing to happen. What does it look like when you consider it a victory? And what does it look like when you consider it a loss and you have to move on from it? So say you say, hey, we want you to open up the gold bottleneck, and they come back and say no. Do you just move on, or what does that process look like when they're responding to it or not responding to it?
So in Scopely's defense, up to this point, they've been very amendable. Like they've been very honest. Like even in the requests we've sent, they're like, oh, this one might be hard, but we will look at it and we'll see if we can even make a minor adjustment. So my thought process on that is there will probably be a negotiation period, where, for instance, if I was to give an idea, in the first dev letter, we sent one asking for 180 shards. They were quite clear that one is going to be a tough one for them. And
they said no without saying no?
No, they didn't say no. They said that's going to be a tough one, but they are looking at ways to address this. In the meantime, for us, I've said to leaders, hey, they told me this one is going to be a tough one. Let's come up with some alternatives in case what they come back with is not sufficient for us. Right. And I think that's the process that we'll go with.
So instead of 180 shards, maybe characters that unlock at lower stars but are more effective at lower stars, some sort of a trade-off like that. But the essential point is that they are getting back to you. They're saying, we're looking into this and we're going to do something about it. And that is, for you guys, enough that you can move on to another topic? Or do you gear up and try and push a certain agenda saying, no, we need something to happen? Like, what is a thing that you take a stance on, that you draw a hard line in the sand? Are there any topics so far like that?
Some of that will depend on the community. Those are things that we'll poll the community about. And the only thing that's a hard stand, like we're not going to make those decisions just at the top. We're going to try to, be as transparent as possible with the community. Because if we're not, why the hell did we bring them there? So we'll probably put things like that. We, as I said, one of the things that we're planning to do is put a tracking page that will be visible to everybody, saying, hey, this is what they answered, this is the timeline, and we'll ask them what for votes on what we should do. I doubt that, especially being that we're trying to keep it focused, that anybody will be happy with a straight no. In my conversations with the devs, I made it known that, even a small even a small concession is better than a no.
Right.
And so we know we're being heard, and there's some action on it.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
that
I really
think
don't
will be-
think that they're going to flat out say no. Anyways, that's not how a professional company operates. At worst
Right.
case scenario, they'll string you along with pretty words and never give you a final answer. That's probably the worst case scenario. But like you said, most of the time, they're going to give you some kind of concession to appease you. And hopefully that's a good enough concession that you guys don't have to continue to say, no, we need more. That's, am I getting that process correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. How responsive have they been so far to the things that you've sent in?
I'll let Sevi answer that because I'm hogging the time.
I think that they have been really responsive in our private chats.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the server goes, they have to be really careful about what they're able to put out. We have pushed them to get an actual pushed out statement that people are able to share, because a lot of people felt after we sent that dev letter that Scopely wasn't really responding and that this was kind of more of a echo in the void than anything else. And once Ev, I should say, did kind of push them for that, a statement did come out. So they are willing to work with us. They're willing to do these communications and conversations. So I feel like it's really moving forward in a positive direction.
Okay.
I'll also add that the usual process is that when we first approach them, they usually give us some sort of unofficial answer that we can't really, say. And it's not because they don't think it's going to happen. It's just because, it's unofficial. And
they've got to control the flow of information to a degree, because if they say something, a lot of people are going to run with it like crazy.
Right. Absolutely. And then usually they will come back with an official answer once they get, because as I said, as you pointed out, we're not dealing with the people that are making the final decisions. So everything that they say has to get
Right.
run up the chain.
Right. Just like you guys are collecting information from the player base at large, disseminating that through the leadership, then moving it up through your upper echelons and distributing it to Scopely, they then have to disperse that up their chain of command, bounce it off the top and come back. And that's a slow process. It takes a lot of work. One thing I was curious about is, so Scopely was recently announced that they were purchased by the Saudi financial firm. Their government purchased Scopely along with some other stuff to broaden their portfolio, and they wanted to get into e-gaming and stuff like that. So they were purchased again. Now Scopely has changed hands countless times since I've been playing from almost the inception of the game. And I was kind of curious. Now, the letter you guys sent off, and a lot of this happened before any of it was really made public. The letter was sent off, and there was no communication with them. Do you think that the sale of Scopely was going on behind the scenes, and they were trying to keep things quiet for the time? Do you think that influenced some of their response and how they responded? And do you think that maybe that influenced, this is kind of my personal theory, that maybe the really tight squeezing of the spenders in the past 6 months to a year has been to bolster their numbers in preparation for the sale of this company?
I hate to put on a tinfoil hat, but absolutely. I mean, when you look at it, it just makes total sense, because for the longest time, I just couldn't understand how they could not see how it was affecting, especially the spending player base. I mean, part of what had us create this was the loss of so many of our friends, and especially at the top. The top spenders are probably 1/4 of what they were this time last year.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have good metrics on this, but it certainly felt like they were squeezing hard, getting a lot of short-term income at the detriment of the long-term viability of the game. And it was like anybody who's been playing for a long time is watching your friends quit, watching the alliances collapse and going, what are you doing? Eventually, you're going to run out of money to squeeze. And we didn't understand what was going on. And so it seems like that makes sense to me. But again, I don't know this. This is just my hypothesis. But it's interesting that you kind of think along a similar line. They aren't going to buy the company for $5 billion and then go back to lower prices. I I don't know, RJ. I don't know how that's. I don't know if that's true or not, because it sure seems like if they keep squeezing the player base and the player base keeps dropping off, they're gonna have to make some sort of changes. But so that was interesting. Yeah. So did they? Do you think that maybe this sale maybe impacted the timeline of their response to you guys? You think that they were dealing with that behind the scenes?
Absolutely. I think the sale explains a lot in terms of their actions. I think that the more important question is how do they move forward after it? I mean, there's two trains of thought that maybe now they ease up on the pricing strategy,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also a very valid point that now um, they're also very much have to prove that the evaluation was correct. So I'm not sure how if
Right. And
in the very
they
next
may have established a
quarter.
new level of spending, and they just aren't going to
Absolutely.
restrict anymore. And we're just here at this plateau where things are going to be this costly for a good long time. Um,
Absolutely.
and maybe they'll open up some other avenue, like with other things. They'll give a different kind of concession to the player base in order to appease us, rather than reduce costs and stuff. I've never seen a game reduce their costs once they establish
Right.
that people are going to buy something. So I don't expect prices to go down, but I do expect them to make some sort of other piece. And the Road Ahead blog was a lot of interesting things, a lot of things that you guys were pushing for, was it not?
Yes, it definitely was. The Road Ahead blog was very encouraging. However, being part of this game for 5 years, it's hard to not take that with a grain of salt. I mean, I think there's been a format where these blogs tend to come out when we're at our wits' end, and I've never seen one of these blogs ever 100% come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
There's no timelines on when things are supposed to happen. And, usually 6 months down the line, we're like, well, what happened to this? What happened to, the proper cadence? What happened to, so hopefully, we're in a unique position right now that we've never been in if this continues to hold them accountable to that
Mm-hmm.
blog.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's one thing that you guys want most from this server, from this movement, from gathering information from the public and giving it to Scopely, if there's one thing that you want most, an overall theme that you want to see happen with this whole thing, what is it?
I'll let Sevi go ahead.
I think in the end, we want to ensure that this movement is ongoing and self-sustaining. So that way we can eventually kind of make this more of like a players union and have a real process in the change and the operations of the game. Because this reactive outrage it's a really defeating cycle. And I think it's really driving people to leave the game.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And okay, so is there anything you guys want to touch on? Anything we missed? Any important things that you want to make mention of?
I just wanted to thank all the players and the CCs and everybody that's gathered behind us at this point. Let them know that we realize that it's a leap of faith because this has been tried 2 or 3 times before. We're not ignorant to that fact. And that, we will definitely try to make this a different situation. Like we're really determined.
Mm-hmm.
So in ending statement, I just want to say thanks to everybody that took the leap of faith to come with us. And we hope that in the future we can bring on those people that are waiting for that are requesting we earn that trust, which we definitely will try to do.
And if there's any one thing, any one request for the people watching this stream, for the people watching this video, is there anything you'd like to ask as far as assistance from the community and how you can help progress this movement?
Sevi?
Join the server, make your voice known. If you have experience in moderation or experience in the gaming industry, shoot me a DM because we're always looking for people to help.
Honestly, at the level this server is operating, that's something people could put on their resume.
Yeah, well, you know, when you try talking about your gaming community habit on the side, employers do look at you a little funny, not gonna lie.
Right. But in the right industry, it could actually open some doors for you, waving the right names around. Well, guys, I really appreciate that. I don't know, did you have any more free time? Do you want to hang out a little bit?
I myself have to run. I think Sevi, I'm not sure if Sevi can hang out, but I really, really want to thank you as well, Run, for bringing us on, and appreciate your help in this as well.
Hey, you're very much welcome. I just wanted to get the word out so that people can have their voice heard and bring this community together even further.
All right. I'm going to sign out. Thank you, Run.
All right. Thanks, Evdog. Appreciate it. And thank you, Sevi. I really appreciate you coming on.